Y'all know what time it is. This is another episode of Bulldozed Draft Lottery Edition with my boy Drew Stevens, Josh M. Hicks here on the mic with you. And we literally just got back from the crib of the draft lottery. And obviously, heck of experience. We wanted to see what the Bulls were going to do and see if they could get just a tad bit of luck to potentially be a lock in for that top four. But things didn't go the Bulls' way this go around. They will have no draft picks in the first round for sure, and potentially no draft picks in the second round. The Orlando Magic have solidified the 11th pick and the sixth pick. And with the pick not being in the top four, the Bulls conceded this pick to the Orlando Magic, so they now have two first round draft picks in this year's draft, with the Houston Rockets rounding out at number 4. And then you have the Spurs winning it all with number 1. The Charlotte Hornets taking number 2. And I completely forgot the third team. I'm not even going to lie to you, bro. But at the end of the day, the Bulls are not in it. So therefore, from a Bulls perspective, Drew, obviously talk about what was the first thoughts that came to your mind when you heard with me the news that the Bulls are not going to have any picks in this draft.
Um, just I guess this management's like easy out no longer being a option. You know, um, they would have been incredibly lucky to have landed a top four pick, let alone the number one pick and the rights to Victor Wenbanyama. But now they're in a position where, as you said, they don't have any picks as it stands right now. But they can potentially talk to the Blazers and see if maybe Portland is willing to loosen the protections on the pick that they owe the Bulls from the Laurie Markkinen three-team trade a couple years ago. Um, New York has a 23rd pick in the draft, and that's owed to the Blazers. Maybe the Bulls can find a way to get the Blazers to give them that pick. You know, you spoke about the number who the third pick in the draft went to. It went to Portland, so you know they're still in a position where they want to do everything possible to make Dame happy and put a better team around him, better supporting cast. So if the Bulls can take advantage of that and see if maybe Portland can attach some things to a pick to give the Bulls so that the Bulls can at least have a draft pick in this upcoming draft. It gives the Bulls another option. It's not the greatest option, you rather have the number one pick or one of those top four picks, but it's something that at least can be at the disposal of the management team to use to try to improve this roster, because short of Arturas Karnisovas going to the Reinsdorfs and getting on his knees and begging and pleading with them to spend into the luxury tax, I don't see how this roster gets much better without some sort of rebuild. And we already know that that's not a route that he wants to take. So, I mean, he has to convince them to spend some money, which we know in terms of the luxury tax, that's not something that they want to do. So them not looking into a top four pick, it just shrinks the already short list of options that they seemingly had at their disposal to make this roster better moving forward.
Yeah, when you talk about the fact that this honestly could have been the draft that really could have helped the Bulls with the rebuild direction, because if they were to land a top 4 pick, you had at least 3 prospects that the Bulls could use to fill voids that are on that team. We need a point guard. If you got top 3, you could have got Scoot Henderson. If you need a big man, because there ain't no guarantee Vooch is coming back. Victor Wenbanyama would be a good consolation prize to say, all right, Vooch, we'll let you go with no issues. And then you talk about the Bulls having a 3 and D threat that could potentially play right now. Brandon Miller's that guy. And you could have got either one of those that could fill each of those voids in the first round. if they were a top 4 pick and they lost out. So now, which direction should the Bulls consider moving? Because at least at this present moment for me, as much as they emphasize, we love Vooch, we want Vooch back, all these type of things, you better be willing to spend some money to get a point guard. Lonzo Ball is not a guarantee to come back. And, from what we heard with his injury and the type of procedure that needs to be taking place, it's shown off ain't no guarantee that he's going to be come back, let alone this season, but let alone his career. So with Lonzo Ball being benched again, you need another point guard. And it's not a guarantee you'll get someone like a Patrick Beverly back or anyone like that. So you gotta make if anything, this forces the Bulls now. If they really want to fill in the holes correctly, that's within this roster. It forces them to make deals most likely that they don't really want to make. Because now you got to look at what you can get for like a DeMar DeRozan or Alex Caruso or anything like that, because you need that to fix what you don't have. And free agency wise, it's showing off ain't no guarantee you're going to get someone for it, especially for the interim. We talk about just for being a year in case Lonzo Ball somehow heals from this procedure and he's able to even go next year. It's not a guarantee and it's not looking good for the Bulls in that regard, but it does force them to be aggressive in ways that they were before, but not in the actual direction they want to go.
Yeah. Again, man, it's almost like the margin of error they had in terms of their on-court product. Like, it was very slim, and then looking at what they can do to try to improve this roster, that's very slim as well. It's crazy that it kind of aligns that way, but they just don't have the money. Like, it's going to have to come, via trades, it seems like, if they're really going to, add some meaningful pieces to this roster. Tyus Jones is a name that we brought up on this podcast before, but now you kind of wonder, with everything that's going on with Ja Morant, are they really going to look to trade Tyus Jones in this offseason and not at this present moment knowing what type of repercussions Ja is going to have for his latest off-court incident? I don't know. And that's, even suggesting that they might want somebody off the Bulls roster. We talked about before it may be being DeMar DeRozan, but man, DeMar is a special player in his own right, but he's somebody that needs a certain team built around him. And I don't know that he would even be somebody that they would want to bring in when their spacing is already seemingly airtight outside of Luke Kennard and Desmond Bane, So I don't really know, man. The options don't look that great right now. But I still think the best move for them is to try to move off of DeMar DeRozan. But like I said, that's easier said than done, in my opinion, just because of the type of player that he is.
And not to mention that even though he's on his last year of his deal, he is making like close to $30 million. So I don't know if any other team would want to take on that type of deal. But since we're talking about point guards, one player that just keeps coming to my mind. Don't know if it's the best option. I ain't gonna lie to you, Bulls Nation, so don't take me too serious with this. But Jalen Suggs come to my mind. Orlando pretty much won this trade. I think you can pretty much argue that even though at the time the Bulls made the trade, it seemed ideal because it was necessary. At the end of the day, the Orlando Magic have won this deal. And Coach Mosley is excited about this new move, about these 2 picks that are coming in. He's looking forward to addressing and scouting the players that can fill that void and build on top of the foundation he already has, which you keep building in the next couple of years really can be a solid foundation with Paolo Banchero, Bobo, and those guys over there. But Jalen Suggs, for me, is a point guard that has grit, shown that, offensively he can hang, and he's young. which is something the Bulls kind of need, and he's still on his rookie deal. If you want to have an insurance policy with Lonzo Ball being out, the best offense that the Bulls ran was transition, and it started on the defensive end. Having Jalen Suggs next to a guy, if you choose to keep Alex Caruso, that boosts your defense and gets you going offensively in the transition. And Jalen Suggs in an open court with DeMar DeRozan on one hand and on one side and Zach LaVine on another, and this is obviously if roster is still the same going into next season. I think I can live with that, especially since for this year that we're about to have, knowing that Lonzo Ball is going to most likely be out. Like, that's a good interim, and if you choose to sign him, you can sign him to a decent deal that can keep him here longevity. And you don't have to worry too much about rushing Lonzo Ball back. You could just play the wait and see game with him and, move forward from there. But that's just an option that came to my mind. And I was like, you know what? If you want to take a risk on a young guy that has potential, and we talked about Tyus Jones, obviously, who fits that, probably in a better way, but we know that it's highly unlikely now with everything going on with Ja. I don't see Jalen Suggs as a bad consolation prize.
No, you would have to trade for him.
Right.
And again, just looking at that Bulls roster and thinking about who you could use as bait to get a Jalen Suggs, who is it that they will want? And then depending on who that person is it worth the Bulls giving up that player to bring in Suggs, who I think, to your point, very gritty guy. We saw that firsthand in some of the matchups that he's had against the Bulls in his young career, but not a 3-point shooter, man. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that Acme needs to address this summer is bringing in shooters, especially if he's going to keep Vucevic and DeRozan and LaVine together. You have to surround these guys with players who can take advantage of open looks. Kobe White got better at that as the season went on. Alex Caruso had a decent season shooting the ball, but you need somebody who's going to be more willing to put it up. And again, man, for all the grit that Suggs brings, he just doesn't quite fit that role. You're not going to find a perfect solution with their money situation and just everything they have in their toolbox to improve this roster. It's just going to be tough as it is, man. Another guy possibly that I was thinking of is Javon Carter from the Bucks, but is he really a starting point guard? I think he's had moments for the Bucks when he's had to fill their role for sure. But again, man, it's just the options aren't great. There are no perfect ones out there. And we saw this front office get really creative the summer when they brought in Alex Caruso and DeMar DeRozan and Alonzo Ball, and they need to tap back into that because it's been, pretty much crickets for the most part ever since they dove into their bag and had the city of Chicago buzzing and thinking that this thing was on the up and up, or on the come up, I should say. But man, today just felt like a continuation of the disappointment that the season was. And it's funny because I think I mentioned this to you as the draft was going on. The Bulls had a 0% chance of getting the 5th through 10th pick. So when Malika Andrews announced that the 11th pick and went to Orlando, I'm thinking, I think I turned to you and I was like, oh man, the Bulls are in the top 4.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out, it was a send-off, The whole logo thing got me, man, because I really thought that the Bulls had hit the jackpot tonight, man. But here we are, you know, between a rock and a hard place, or rather, Acme is seemingly in between a rock and a hard place, and we as fans and observers are just, you know, left thinking what is it that this management team can do from this point moving forward.
Yeah, going into tonight's draft lottery, the Bulls had a 1.8% chance of getting a top 4 pick or the top pick in the draft. 1.7 was enough to get us Derrick Rose and away, but man, that we didn't get that type of luck this go around. With the Bulls dropping out of the first round and most likely the entire NBA draft, which I really can't think of the last time that has actually ever happened to the Bulls, where they had no picks in a draft, not even a second rounder. That's not Bulls-esque in their terms. But if you can't go the point guard route, you need to go the point guard route. But you talk about the shooter route as well. How dire is it now that AK pretty much, I'm be honest, he ain't gonna convince the Reinsdorfs to do anything because the Reinsdorfs are just not. Then we know what they are. So I don't see them bending the checkbook to Arturas Karnisovas. I just don't. Although they should because they've been singing like giving out secret extensions. But what is the? I just can't think of what will be the next move. Are we like so? When we think about this, are we really in doomsday, Sahara Desert, dry as ever, with no direction? Camel then left us, like we're just stranded. Like that's what we're saying right now on the eve of this, the aftermath of this draft lottery, May 16th, 2023. Recording this at 10:45 at night. Like you telling me that we literally have no chance really to flip this thing around because the Bulls have to be so willing to let go of this core to make this work.
I mean, in terms of the season next year, it doesn't seem like there's much room for them to improve outside of whatever improvements they make internally. You know, the Patrick Williamses of the world, the Kobe Whites, even the Zach LaVines. I think there's still some space for him to improve. Whether or not he can make those improvements, you know, his decision making, his ball handling, a little bit of his basketball IQ late in games. There's room for him to do something there, but outside of that, it's not quite doom and gloom, I guess, because it's not like they're not going to be a bottom of the barrel team. You know, they still compete most nights. They'll still have outside chance of sneaking into that six seed, but you know, I think they're destined for like 8 to 10. You know, 8 to 10 wins, even in 21-22 when they went 46-36. They were a couple of DeMar DeRozan game winners away from being in the play-in tournament. So, I mean, it's not like that wave they had the first 30, 35 games of that season was enough to make you think this team can be like a home court advantage team in the playoffs, you know. That's presently constituted, I mean. So, for this upcoming season, doesn't look great as of right now. You know, maybe they can pull some rabbits out of their hats and get creative the same way they did a couple summers ago. But it looks like it's going to be real challenging for that to happen.
Man, this is going to be an interesting season. You just said the best the Bulls can do is most likely an 8 to 10 seed. Oh my God, the fact that just Anyways, that's all we got for you guys tonight. Bulls draft lottery has officially taken place. You will not see the Chicago Bulls in the NBA draft, especially first round, unless things change. You're really not going to see them in the draft. And yeah, Bulls Nation, just sit back and relax until at least July 1st to see what the Bulls are going to do with free agency at this point, because there's no guarantee that they're going to make the roster better at this present moment. We may be in for a repeat of last year. So buckle up, Bulls Nation, until we, catch up with you guys again. This is another episode of BULLdozed, live after and from the draft lottery. Drew Stevens, Josh M. Hicks, signing off. It's us.